I remember the winter of 1997. So, over 20 years ago, and we had no idea how we were going to get traction. At that point, we were like 2 years.
My name's David Thompson, and I am currently one of the lead pastors at the Summit Church in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. This is my wife, Jen, and we want to just kind of share our story from Snowbird. I was a student pastor at Centergrove in Clemens, North Carolina, and I was looking for a place to take our students to camp.
Well, so it was 1997. So I think we'd been at it for about a year and a half in the planning stages. But it was like this was the first time we were going to actually put our name out there. Like, hey, we are Snowbird Outfitters. And so what we did, we didn't have any money. We had no facility. We had the land, but no facility. So there's no infrastructure. No buildings, no cabins. At this time, nothing. We ended up putting the ad in Group Magazine that we were this new camp facility, and absolutely embellished, who we are and what we were as far as the physical side of it.
I was frantically, prayerfully looking for a place to go in the mountains, and just by chance kind of discovered this place in a magazine I was reading. So I called them up to see if we could bring our students up there. They said they weren't even open yet, but you're welcome to come on up here, and we could try and do some kind of camp-like experience for you.
So they're coming to camp, and I've got it written down on the calendar on whatever date. It was in March. I remember that. And I started working. I thought I had about a month to sort of get the property presentable. And you have to realize this was a raw piece of land. There wasn't a cabin. There wasn't a road. There wasn't a walk path. There were cows on the property. There was a corn patch on the property. There was no infrastructure. I mean, it was rough, raw, rugged piece of mountain land. And they're coming to look at it because I've put this ad in the paper saying we got a new camp. So I was on the tractor. We had an old farm tractor that some friends had given to us. A church had given to us. Just an old John Deere farm tractor, and I've got a scrape blade, and I'm trying to scrape out like enough of an entrance off of the paved road where somebody could pull a vehicle at least, and then we could get out and walk. And I busted the axle on that tractor, and so I'm trying to get the tractor fixed. I'm thinking I've got a week until they get here. I remember I've got this thing jacked up and then on jack stands, and I've got I'm greased from head to toe, and I'm working on this thing, and I see this black Suburban driving up the road real slow, like they're looking for something. And well, I don't immediately think it's them because I think David's coming a week from now. There happened to be the biggest manhunt of the last 25 years going on in our valley. There was an FBI top 5 most wanted guy on the loose in the mountains here, and so the FBI is in and out. You're seeing these black Suburbans all the time. So I'm like, there's another FBI guy, a crew or team or whatever. I never give it a second thought. Then they turn and pull off the paved road right to where I'm working. So I'm like, well, I'm gonna have some fun with these guys. I'm thinking it's federal agents. So I roll out. I don't have to act like a hillbilly because I am one, but I turn it up a notch, and I roll out, and I'm, greasy. I'm a grease monkey, and got my Carhartt bibs on and I go walking up to the Suburban. How y'all doing? And he gets out and introduces himself as David Thompson and says he's looking for a guy named Brody Holloway. And I'm like, that's me. And I remember, so funny, man. It was like, oh gosh, these guys are gonna get in the. I really thought they're gonna get in the car and go home.
So she and I and one other guy got in a van and drove up to Snowbird, 3.5 hours away. And we got there, and it was basically a wide open field on the side of a mountain.
With a tent.
I don't even think at that time they had the tent set up.
The tents were coming.
Yeah.
Tents were coming. Shelter?
They promised tents.
A shelter, maybe?
They cast
An outdoor restroom was already there.
Yeah, I think they had like an outdoor restroom. But they cast vision for what it was going to be. And they said, we're right down here. We could set up a little tent with some tables, and that could be where we eat. And then we'll get some tents that have these wood floors, and we'll, set up tents here, here, and here. The guys can shower in the stream down here. They had some relationships with the high school there. So we would load the kids up in the bus and, take the kids to the showers in the high school. But they kind of sold us on it. But we were sold primarily because of who they were, not because of any of the amenities they were offering.
It was definitely not because of the amenities they were offering. And I remember going away saying, are we really going to do this? Are we really going somewhere? There is no kitchen. There is no bathroom.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit skeptical. But again, once you meet them, you just knew they were to be trusted and would take care of us and take care of our students. So
that summer we loaded up probably 60, 70 students, I don't know how many, and came up there to Andrews, North Carolina, and told the students, here's your camp. You've got this tent. They've got this tent. That's where we'll be eating, down there on the side of the mountain. And so we spent a week up there. We were able to introduce the students to mudsliding, which was very memorable, life-changing for some.
And it was day one, David and Jen get their group there. So these kids from Centergrove show up, 50 kids, 50 or so. And they roll off the vans and buses, and pretty quick we're headed up the mountain. And now you got to understand, it's this steep. And again, to me, I'm not thinking anything about it. This just, I grew up playing like that, and it's what we, well, these kids are not happy because it's steep, it's muddy, it's hot. It's the middle of, I think, middle of summer. I think it was mid-July, and we get to the top of this mountain. Of course, get up there and the view's incredible. But when we start down the backside, I mean, you've got 50, 60 people just flying down the side of this mountain. By God's grace, nobody, got their heads smacked around a tree. We have learned a lot since then about, how to run wreck and how to do things the right way. But we just didn't know what we're doing. And David was like, yeah, let's do it. And I remember it was just this crazy, 50, 60 kids flying off the side of a mountain. And it was extremely memorable for me. And anytime I meet, I run into one of those students from that group that, you now have their own kids coming to camp. They talk about mountain surfing, and I think they call it mudsliding, but it became an official rec at Snowbird for several years.
Every night we would walk out of the camp.
Oh, that's right. There was no building to
no
have
building.
Worship or anything. We would walk to a teeny tiny church.
So, yeah, less than half
Not
a
far.
mile away. Big Kahuna and Brody were the ones that were giving some of the messages. And they were just incredibly powerful worship services. And one night in particular, it was as close to a mini revival that I've ever experienced. And students were confessing sins, and we just, an extended period of prayer and worship that we still talk about today, and students still talk about today.
But there was this one night at the church, it was maybe 3 or 4 nights into camp, and it was different. It wasn't like the big high energy camp service where we didn't have a solid band, we didn't have lights and smoke, and there was no big atmosphere energy to it. We just taught the Bible. But we had, at this point, 3 or 4 days of hour by hour engaging these students in conversation, and relationships were being built, and it was happening. And it's kind of crazy because this is what God called you to several years before. Now this, for the first time, we're doing it, and it's actually effective. You should expect it to be effective because it's what God's called you to do. Build relationships, disciple students, but it's happening and it's working and God's blessing it. And I remember that night, kids were just getting real with the Lord. It wasn't the typical raise your hand, get emotional, and yay, I'm at camp and I want to follow Jesus. It was, real conversations, God moving in people's hearts, several kids being surrendered to the call to ministry and missions. And I'll never forget that night. And we're over two decades later now, and that night stands out as this sort of defining moment in my life and ministry and in the lives of a lot of those students. And I know for David and Jen, it's the same way.
I've loved thinking about over 20 years what it must have been like in their mind when it was just them in a little tiny house. Brody and Little were newly married, no children when we first met them. I remember knowing her when she was pregnant with her first child, but no children, the seed, like the tiny seed that was planted in their hearts of, hey, let's turn this into a camp, and then to do it, to start with literally tents and an outdoor restroom and a covered shelter where they brought in food. They didn't even have a kitchen. And now to have created an environment of camp that has the same philosophy and vision behind it, but just has more walls around it, is so cool and so encouraging to me to follow those same kind of seeds that God plants in us even now.
Yeah.
So we exist to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. We did then, we do now. Through the exposition of Scripture, we did then, we do now. And then to build relationships and equip the church. We're going to build relationships with students. We did that then. We've been doing it ever since. And we're going to equip the church. It's about partnerships. It's about advancing the kingdom. It's about helping student pastors disciple and grow and build up young people where we understand we don't just have a 5-day impact. Those 5 days are going to matter in that young person's life for 50 years. And really for 50 generations. I now have the privilege of talking to young people who are now in their mid-30s and even, early 40s, who were here in those early days, and it impacted them, and now you see the effect 20 years later. So the impact is not just about these 5 days, it's about the course of their life. And so we're building relationships, we're equipping the church, we're doing it now, and we were doing it then. So in that sense, the mission of Snowbird hasn't changed. If anything, it's become fortified. It's become stronger. It's become more focused. Hopefully, we've matured as individuals and as a ministry. And what we were doing then, we're doing now. But by God's grace, we're doing it more effectively. And if God could so graciously enable us to impact those students, what can he do now and 20 years from now, 2-3 generations into this thing? It's exciting to think about it. There are nights where I don't sleep because I think about, man, what's God going to do in the next 20? I look at what he's done in the last 20 and I'm blown away by it.